Good morning. Morning, students. We are here to continue with the functional writing. The other time we handled speech writing, and I hope now we are conversant with what we are supposed to do as far as writing a speech is concerned. This time we are going to look at something different, which is report writing. As you are aware, with functional writing, there are a number of things that we have to look at, and we say functional writing deals with what we call the life skills. When we talk of a report, just like speech, you realize that at any one moment of time, one is required to give a speech, however short. It could be formal or informal, but having gone through the different speeches and what is required for us to give a good speech, I think now we can do that thoroughly well. Now we move to another step of writing a report, just like the speech. Many of us, after completion of studies, we shall go to work in organizations, and at one point of time, we shall be required to produce reports on different activities and instances demanded by those above you. For every activity, in most cases in an organization, after it has taken place, and maybe you are in the lead of this particular situation or activity, you are required to give a report. For example, you could be sent for a workshop, and after attending the workshop, you have to give a report to your boss about what transpired in the workshop. But when we are giving this report, we do not simply write down anything. There are certain things to follow, just like we saw with the speech. First of all, let us get to know how could we define a report. We say a report is spoken or written account that gives information. A report is spoken or written account that gives information on a situation, an event. An event we know is the same thing as a happening. A happening could as well be an activity. Your report could also be based on a subject. We shall see when does it require us to write a report that is based on a subject. So it is a written account on a situation or an event or a subject, and you're giving information because maybe some people are not there and they would wish to know what really took place. You realize when we are either writing a report or giving a report, we could be as individuals or we could give this report as a group. Now, a report could also be defined as an official document. This is an official document. Now, the word official there guides us on something as far as this report is concerned. The other time we are looking at formal speeches. Now, we say formal because there's a formality. Now, we are talking of official. If anything is official, then it has a certain trend to follow. It is formal. Therefore, when we come to the way we communicate, if this report is simply spoken, matters a lot in the sense that we have to be as formal as possible. Even when we write the speech, there are certain guidelines that we have to follow to make it a little formal. More so when it comes to the language that is used in that particular report. I would like us to look at characteristics of a report. What would we say are the characteristics of a report? This would zero to maybe the language. Let us look at language as number one thing of the report. When you look at the report, it is characteristic of a report to have language using the past forms. The language should use the past forms. Maybe we haven't been stressing the issue of language as far as these aspects of functional writing are concerned, but in order for us to present the best of the piece, different aspects under functional writing do take different forms of language, and it is this language that qualifies it as the best piece, such that when you do not follow the basics as far as language is concerned, you might end up producing something that is so different from what is required. For example, you remember very well when Mr. Saleh taught you the minutes and looked at the language that is supposed to be used as far as minutes are concerned. At a point of time, seen a student write minutes in the present tense, which cannot be. When you look at the minutes, they're supposed to take the past form as well. And in most cases, these aspects that do take the past form do employ the passive voice. When you look at language in your paper too, and we look at the passive vis-a-vis the active, we should be in position to differentiate the two, the active and the passive. Now, the past form, we cannot use the past form in the report and run away from using the passive language. Now, when you look at the past form, we say that when you're writing the report, because you're writing about something that is not taking place at that particular moment, but you're giving a record about something that took place some time back. That explains very well as to why we zero to the past form. And why do we use the passive language? The passive language is used here to avoid being subjective. We are supposed to be very objective in this report, in the sense that when we present the report, we are not supposed to zero to our opinions. We are supposed to look at what we observed or transpired. Something might happen, and you might be either positive about it or negative about it. But when you're presenting this report here, you have to zero to exactly what happened without bringing in your own opinions as an individual. Otherwise, when you bring in your own opinions, you lose the objectivity of that particular report and you become subjective. So when we are writing the report, we should bear in mind that the report should not at any one time include personal feelings. So we are saying no personal feelings should be. Personal feelings or personal findings. Something might have happened maybe when you are attending a particular event, but you have an opinion about it. If it wasn't prepared, if it wasn't presented there, and it wasn't talked about, we do not give you room when you're writing a report to bring in what you feel should have happened if it did not really take place, much as it might have been the right thing. So when will your opinion come in? You realize as we move in the report that we have an area that we term as recommendations. Maybe that is where you bring in what you think could have taken place if it did not take place. But when you're writing the report and you're presenting exactly what happened, when we come to the body of this report, avoid bringing in what we term as personal findings. So we also said a report should also be clear. When you look at characteristics, we are saying the report should be clear and concise. The report is meant to be clear and concise. Because you're reporting about something where people did not attend, you have to be very clear for them to understand and have a picture of what really took place wherever you were or whatever the situation was. You realize that when you look at the definition here, the definition as we move on to the types of reports will help us zero to the different types of reports. So it is because of that definition that we come up with different types of reports that cater for what the definition says as far as a report is concerned. The number 4, you should bear in mind that when it comes to the layout of the report, the layout should take the paragraph forms. And here I want to warn you that it cannot be a report unless otherwise, like we shall see when we come to the types of reports. There's a type of report which does not fulfill this, but the rest of the reports do fulfill this. Most reports do carry what we term as subtitles. So if it is not that particular report that we are yet to see, and you are required to write another kind of report, you realize that all reports will carry subtitles. So we cannot come up with a block representation that looks like an essay and it does not have the subtitles and then claim at the end of the day that what we have presented is actually a report. I would like to take you through the different types of reports, having looked at the characteristics that I've listed here that you should bear in mind as you write this report. As far as the language is concerned, as far as your personal findings are concerned, as far as the presentation is concerned, that is clear and concise, and as far as the layout is concerned, present it in form of paragraphs. Here we mostly focus on the fact that for us, we are students and we are going to write these reports and they will be handwritten. There's a difference between something that is handwritten and something that is typed. As a rule for UNEP, because all these things are handwritten when it comes to exams, we cannot run away from the traditional form of paragraphing. And when I talk about the traditional form of paragraphing, it means here we have to use the indented paragraphs after using our subtitles. Our presentations in these reports, when written, should use paragraphs that are indented. Now let us go to the different types of reports. We talk of reports, there are quite a number of reports. And we should be in position to know which one to write where. It really confuses, but we have to understand this and then the confusion will be clear. It takes a lot for the students to understand which type of report is required to write when and where. But let us understand or get to know the different types of reports. If we get to understand them, then it will be a little simpler for us to write the reports so easily because we know the circumstances in which the different reports are written. Number 1, we have what we call short reports. Short reports. These ones are also known as ordinary reports. They are also known as simple reports. They are also known as routine reports. They are also known as non-survey reports. They are non-investigative. Why am I listing all these names? Because they guide you and they help you understand the particular report that we are talking about. The short report, like we have said, is a simple report. The word simple there, I think, defines it very well. You could as well call it a block report. Simple. What makes it very simple? Because of its format, the structure that it takes. Even when you look at the presentation when we write it, as compared to the rest of the reports that we shall look at, you realize that this report is simpler to come up with. It is this report that we usually write. It is this report that is usually demanded. Take an example. We have said a short report is a routine report. That means if we are to give a report on things that occur regularly, then we have to write a short report. When we talk about a routine, that means something happens in a given period of time. It could be on a daily basis, it could be on a weekly basis, it could be on a fortnightly basis, it could be on a monthly basis, it could be after 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, even if it is on a yearly basis, even if it happens after every 2 years, then that means it has become a what? A routine. I think we understand the word routine when we come back to our school environment. Here in Chibuli Secondary School, we have what we call the school routine. When you look at the school routine, every morning the students have to wake up and at a given time they have to move to the mosque and attend the morning prayers. After that, they have to go for preps, that is at exactly 6, and they have their preps from 6 to 7. Every morning from 7:20 up to 10:30, we have lessons and we shall break off for break. After break, we continue with the middle session, and after that, we shall break off for lunch. After lunch at 2, we continue with the lessons that end at 4:40. And at 4:40 every day, the lessons will come to an end. Whatever happens outside that is not on the normal school time table, like the extra lessons. So when you look at this happens day in, day out. Every day, that is what happens. So we refer to that as a routine. So if something happens on a regular basis, then it is a routine. And if we are to give a report here, we shall not use any other report, but we shall present the report using what we term as the short report. And when we look at the format, that means our presentation has to come out in that particular way if it is a routine. Another example I would give here is the fact that Chibuli is a sports school. We have our sports team always going out for competitions. We have netball in school, we have football, we have basketball, we have handball, we have badminton and other games there. But we are aware that each time we report to school, these sportsmen and sportswomen are always taken out to compete in different tournaments. They have so many, the Coca-Cola tournament, the Novice, the Umea. You realize that at a particular point of time, maybe in first term or second term, the netball team will go to compete in the Umea tournament. At a particular point of time, the football, basketball, netball, badminton, and etc. will go to compete in the Coca-Cola tournament for schools. So this happens every year. So wherever they go out, these teams have captains. The captains are supposed to present a report on what transpired there. And when they are giving this report, they have to look at different things that happen as far as the tournament is concerned. Now, when you look at the definition, we say a report gives information on an activity, on an event, on a situation. Now, we who did not go, we get a picture of what transpired there by looking at the particular report that is presented. So, a short report is a routine report. I think when I explain routine, you understand what it means here and when to employ this kind of report. We say it is simple. When we look at the structure, you realize that it is a very simple structure. Then it is ordinary. It doesn't have other things attached to it. In most cases, we write this report by merely focusing on observation. What did we see there? And that is exactly what we have to report. We do not need to ask, to keep on asking people there to seek for their opinions or to tell us what we did not see. Why? Because we have said this one is a non-investigative report. It is a non-survey report. Because we do not carry out investigations, we don't carry out any survey. We base on what we have observed, and we shall scribble it down and inform people what really took place. Before we go into other reports, I would like us to see the format of this short report. How does a short report look like? Just like other features, you will realize a short report will begin by us presenting a heading. I think when you look at your mobile phones or your laptops, you see some information posted there as far as reports are concerned. You realize that the first one that is given to us is none other than the short or ordinary report. It also reflects here that this one is used on activities, usually on activities, and they give us the structure of that particular report. Now, when you look at the structure there, the format takes you to the heading. And what are we supposed to include in the heading? You remember very well what we emphasized with speech writing as far as the heading is concerned. When we write a heading for any report, we have to begin the heading by stating a report on. The very first words, the first three words that you will use there will be a report on. We do not give a report about. We do not give a report of, but we give a report on. And then that heading will go ahead to indicate from who is giving the report, where is it coming from. Then it will also reflect the to, who is it being written to. It will also go ahead to talk about the venue where the activity took place. It will also talk about the time. When we look at the headings as we go to the samples, you realize that all this will be reflected in the different titles of the different reports that we shall look at. So the heading will give us the from, the to, the venue, and the date. But it will also stress the type of report. Is it a report on the sports activities that took place on sports day? So sports activities is the type. A report on the weekly duty. You know, when prefects are at school, they are usually prefects that are on duty for a particular week, and it is a must. I don't know whether they really do it. It is a must that at the end of the week they give a report on what they observed as far as the week is concerned. And I told you that here they'll look at different areas. What happened when it comes to cleanliness? What happened when it comes to meals? What happened when it comes to lesson attendance by teachers and students? What happened in the different areas in the school? So when they give that report, when we say type of report, a report on the weekly duty, the prefect's weekly duty. Now, prefect's weekly duty will emphasize the type of report that we are giving, and we shall go ahead to state who is giving us the report, who are they writing the report to, where in Chibuli Secondary School, when, during week number 2, from this date to that particular date. That will be in case of time. Now, because it is a weekly duty here, we are not going to look at time in terms of hours, but we are going to look at time in terms of days. You know, when we talk about time, time could be hours, time could be in times of months, time could be in times of weeks, times could be in times of years, and etc. So the number one thing we shall begin with in this short report is to give what we term as a heading. The next feature we expect when we are writing a short report is what we term as the introduction. When you write essays, you realize that the essays also carry what we term as introductions to these essays. These are reports that you're presenting to people, and it should have something to introduce to us, what you're basically going to talk about, basing on the activity or situation or the event that did take place. So with the simple or short report, your next step should be the body. The next step should be the body. Now, I said that we cannot pause and say we are writing a report that does not have subtitles. When after the heading that is fully capitalized and underlined, we shall have the word introduction and underlined. And then below it, we shall present a paragraph that gives information as far as the introduction is concerned. Then after that, we shall come to the body. You will have that subtitle, hold the body, and after that, you will give us the subtitles in the different areas. After writing the word body, underline, and below it, we shall immediately have a subtitle depending on what you want to talk about. The prefix want to talk about cleanliness, and our subtitle below will be cleanliness, and it will be underlined. But this one will instead take what we term as the lower case. Therefore, information will be written under cleanliness. What did you see? What did you observe as far as cleanliness is concerned? So, in the body, also note that we should have, for examination purposes, I always advise that here we should have, don't fall below 7 subtitles. Do not fall below the 7 subtitles. When you're coming up, do not come up with only 1 subtitle, 2 subtitles, and then you say you have written a good report. Otherwise, when it comes to content, you will be penalized for that. I hope you can see on your phone that from the introduction, we have what we call the body. I want to ignore the fact that here it talks about findings and observations. No, it is not the findings. We shall see when we are supposed to use the findings, not here in the short report. We are only supposed to have the body, which body will have 7 for examination purposes. If you're writing the report in your company, do not tie yourself to the items that we are talking about. But I want to lay great emphasis when it comes to exams. Why 7? Because we know the mark we are supposed to be awarded as far as content is concerned. If we write very little because they want us to express ourselves and we write only 2 paragraphs, we have only 2 subtitles under body, and that is what we are talking about. They say this is not good enough for us to gauge the kind of language that you have here. So they give you room to play around with all the words and English that you know, so that you can express yourself in the best way possible. So make sure that at least you have a minimum there of 7. Now, after the body, this short report moves to what we term as the recommendations and conclusion. That is another subtitle. Recommendations and conclusion. What does it mean? It means here that under this we shall have first the recommendations. You could be having more than 3 recommendations. And remember what we usually say when it comes to paragraphing. Each idea takes its own paragraph. So the 3 paragraphs that talk about the recommendations will come first, and then finally we shall draw a conclusion as far as the report is concerned. Then the next step, when we are done, we are supposed to sign off. And I hope at this stage we have learned what we mean by signing off. We move to the right-hand side of our presentation, and then we shall first append our signature, and then we shall write our name in capital letters, and then we shall write designation. In which capacity are we writing this report? Are we writing the report as a head prefect? Are we writing the report as a school captain? So also add the designation. Signature, name in capital letters. Why have I used name here in capital letters? Because it is a reflection that the name you write there, your name, has to be fully in capital letters. And then thereafter, you write the designation, which means the capacity in which you're writing this letter. I want us to look at the report, the sample that you have there. Look at the sample that you have there as your report. It has the heading, says report from. It is not a report from. We said it has to be a report on. Now look at the title. Report from the head boy to the head teacher, Chibuli Secondary School on students' complaints. So we should have said a report on students' complaints from the head boy to the head teacher, Chibuli Secondary School, during first term 2018. A report on students' complaints in sports from the head boy to the head teacher during first term 2018. Now, when we say a report on, I said state the type of report. It is a report on students' complaints. That is the type. Then when I say, we said it should reflect the from. We have said a report on students' complaints, and then we say from the head boy to the head teacher, which means the from and to have also been catered for. Then when we talk about the venue, one wonders, the venue is already reflected there. All this is taking place where? In Chibuli Secondary School. And then when we talk about the date, the time has been reflected there during first term. So you realize that our title here is all encompassing. The only undoing that the title had was the fact that it was not well arranged as far as we are supposed to arrange the title. We have made correction there, and I hope all of you have corrected the mistake that was right there. So, after the heading, you see introduction. We say the second step as far as the simple or short report is concerned is for you to give us the introduction. This one gives you a hint, and then it says, following the Students' Council meeting held on 21st October 2018, the poor performance in sports was discussed at length. So we see the source. What is it that provoked or prompted these people to write a report? Because there was a council meeting and there was a problem that was to be addressed. There was a situation in this case that was to be addressed. And the situation was none other than the poor performance in sports. So the discussion after that, this could not have been a meeting maybe, or it is a meeting, but somebody has to give a report on what transpired there and then presents it to us. That gives us a clue on what we are to deal with, because we realize that the title does not give it all. So it is the introduction that now guides us to what really took place and what we are yet to handle and look at as far as the report is concerned. I also want you to make a correction as far as that sample of the report is concerned. From the introduction, you realize that we have a subtitle. Here, the subtitles are not underlined. Please, as you're writing the reports, if you are the one writing this one, make sure that those subtitles are underlined so that they come out distinctly. It would be even far better if you wrote the word introduction in the uppercase, fully capital letters and underlined. Findings in uppercase. And we shall see when do we go into the lowercase. And we said here the writer uses findings, but when it comes to the short report, we never have anything termed as findings. We shall know why do they call them findings elsewhere. What is it that hinders us from referring to them as findings here? So where they have written findings there, in that sample that you have, can you cross out the word findings and write their body? It is not supposed to be findings, but it is supposed to be body. We do not use the word findings when we are talking about a short report. Now, after the word findings, which is fully capitalized and underlined, we have a subtitle. I talked about using capital letters. We use the capital letters for the main title. We use the capital letter for the subtitle introduction. We use the capital letter for another subtitle, which is the body. Now, when we come down, because we are dealing with certain things that are grouped under the body. When you look at lack of sports equipment, that is the body. That is the gist of the report. What is it that they observed? They observed that the team lacked the sports equipment. So that one is the one that is supposed to come in small letters. But the small letters too have to be underlined. So lack of sports equipment. Yes, it is in small letters, right? But it has to be underlined. And it is right under the body. That is where I talked about the 7 different areas. Amongst the 7, this writer has come up with one. Lack of sports equipment. The second one, lack of coaches. That is number 2. The third one, the poor feeding. Instead of 7, this writer here comes up with only 3 areas as far as the body is concerned. But I want you and stress the fact that try to ensure that you come up with at least 7 different areas as far as the body is concerned. Now, when you look at lack of sports activity, we have not fully given you the body here. We have tried to give you a line there. Maybe after the lesson, during your free time, you go back and give the skeleton of the body, flesh, and build your own paragraph and see how you can argue out this particular point if you are the one writing out this report. We said there was a complaint of inadequate sports equipment. There was a complaint of inadequate sports equipment. What does that ring in your mind? Go back to what we talked about when we are looking at the characteristics of the report. We said the report has to take on the past form. Now, when there was a complaint, the structure of the report has already taken on the past form. There was a complaint of inadequate sports equipment. You realize that this statement has taken on what we term as the passive voice. When you look at the passive voice vis-a-vis the active, in the active voice, we look at the doer of the action. Now, in the passive, we do not focus on the doer of the action. Now, if there was a complaint, whoever made the complaint as far as the inadequate sports equipment are concerned is not mentioned here. And that is exactly what we have to do. And when we do it that way, that means we are taking on the passive voice that I talked about when I was beginning to explain the issue of presentation as far as report writing is concerned. Like I told you, with these aspects of functional writing, the kind of language that is tied to a given aspect is very important in the sense that when you define the language, there's a lot that you're going to lose out as far as marks are concerned. So that one line explains it all. It gives us the past form, and it also gives us what we call the passive voice. The passive voice is there. So build a paragraph. What you have to say as far as the inadequate sports equipment is concerned. When I use one line there, it does not mean you're going to present your point using one line. That subtitle, which is lack of sports equipment, should be accompanied with a number of explanation to, give weight to the point that you are raising as far as the sports equipments are concerned. So go ahead and explain and build a reasonable paragraph. I've been singing now and then that what I would call a reasonable paragraph should run at least between 5 to 6 lines. In that particular book that you have, ensure that we are running 5 to 6 lines explaining only one thing, that is lack of sports equipment. That is a skeleton statement that has been written there, and like I said, it is now upon you to go back and give body to this skeleton point that has been given. The second point that the writer gives here is lack of coaches. Lack of coaches here also has to be underlined. It is a subtitle and a body. If you have to look at the structure, when I talked about the structure here, if we were focusing on this particular report, I cannot write here lack of coaches, lack of sports equipment, lack of poor feeding. All that is engrossed in the body. So when I talked about the 7 subtitles, those are the 7 subtitles, much as here we only have 3. Though that is what I meant. We only consider it as the body because the gist of the report is right here. You are giving information, the information that these people would wish to know, the relevant information is in here in what we term as the body. Take an example. If the prefects were giving a weekly report, like I said, we should have our subtitle body and then come up with a subtitle A. You are even free here to number. You can use Roman numerals or you can use the letters. A, cleanliness. Then you say blah, 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 blah about the cleanliness. B, meals. Then blah, 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 blah about all the meals during that week. We talked about lesson attendance. C, lesson attendance. Then blah, blah, blah as far as lesson attendance is concerned. What else could we talk about here in school? We said we have to make 7. We have so far made 3. We could talk about discipline. If the prefects were giving a report for a particular week, they could also comment on the discipline. What did they notice as far as discipline is concerned? Here in Chibuli, we have a problem of uniform abuse. Their number 5 could be school uniform. What did they notice as far as the school uniform is concerned? We have 2 more areas to go. What else would we talk about? Timekeeping. We are very good at losing time. When the bell goes for break, after break, people, they walk sluggishly back to class. So this person could also talk about the time management. Did these students actually succeed to manage the time very well, or they did not? 7, besides time management, what else would we talk about? Maybe there were seminars during that week. Then finally, we shall talk about academics. Even if there are no seminars, we could talk about academics. What was your observation as far as academics is concerned? To boost academic in Chibuli Secondary School, there were seminars that were held, there were tests that were given, those academic programs. So you realize at least I've come up with 7 different areas that I'll put under body as subtitles if I was writing a report on as a prefect on the weekly duty during that particular period of time in Chibuli Secondary School. Then when you look at the sample here, like I said, has what I would regard as problems there. Here they say recommendations and then conclusion. This is supposed to be one subtitle, recommendations and conclusion. Do not separate them the way you see or as posted on your phone. Do not separate them, my dear students. Make sure that the next subtitle, after you have presented your body and its subtitles, is recommendations and conclusions. And I already explained how you draw a demarcation here. You present your recommendations first in form of paragraph, and when you are done with the recommendations, you present your paragraph that draws a conclusion to the whole report as far as this short report is concerned. And when you are done, then we shall move to the right-hand side, and then we sign off like I have already explained before. So that gives us the face. That gives us the face. That gives us the structure. That gives us the outlook of what we term as a short report. In that case, I think we are now all in position to present a short report. I want us to go to another type of report. The second type of report, we are looking at types. We have already seen the type number 1, types of reports, is the sister report. That is the second. The sister report. The other one is short report. This one is termed as the long report. The long report. This one is also called a special report. We term the other one as a simple report. We are terming this one as a special report. What makes it so special? When I talked about simple, I think you also noticed the simplicity of the short report, basing on the layout and what we have seen. So this one is a special report. This one is called an investigative report. This one is also called a survey report. Some people will term it as a dissertation. Some people will term it as general. Why do I call it a sister report? Because it looks like the opposite. Why do we term the other short report, long report? The opposite of short is long. That means there is something that this report adds that we have not seen when we looked at the short report. We said the other short report is a non-investigative report. We are terming this one as an investigative report. So you realize that this report, in this report, if we are required to deal with this report, we must have carried out some investigations. We must have carried out some survey. We do not only dwell on our observations and what we know. We seek for opinions from other people and collect information and sieve and later present a concrete thing. Usually these reports, we could see these reports when I think in your era you have not heard of the St. Akajubi report. When you look at the education structure and the curriculum, there was research that was made by St. Akajubi, and in his report he presents this. He moved to schools, he moved to different areas, he consulted many people that have a lot of knowledge on education in order to come up with something that is concrete. So to come up with this report, you have to do thorough investigation. It is long in the sense that the structure is long. And it is long in the sense that it takes some longer period of time. You cannot carry out investigations and then do it in just hours. And then you say you have concrete information or your information is thorough and dependable. It will take you some good time. So this kind of report will take you some good time collecting information and data that you're going to present in order to come up with something that we could say is superb. So a long report, when you look at its format, we want to see the difference as far as the long report is concerned vis-a-vis the short report. With the long report, just like other features under functional writing, we begin with the heading. The heading in the long report does not in any way differ from the heading that we have looked at when we are looking at the short report. It will also begin with a report on, and it will also give us type. It will also give us to, from. It will also give us to. It will also give us menu. It will also give us time. So the heading takes just the same aspects like we have seen in the short report. Secondly, when we come to the long report, we shall begin with the introduction. The introduction does not differ from what we have seen with the short report. We could frame the introduction just like we did. The introduction usually spells the how, the when, the where, and the why. If you want to formulate the how, the why, the how, the when, the where, are included in what we term as the introduction. Why was a committee instituted? Because it was supposed to do a certain job. And I think that explains the why. So, after the introduction, now this is where the report takes a twist as compared to the short report that we have just looked at. The long report will now not go to what we have seen as the body. It will enter into an area that we term as terms of reference. It will give us the terms of reference. What do we mean by terms of reference? Terms of reference are objectives of the report. If you do not understand what we mean by terms of reference, these are objectives of the report. What are the objectives of the report? It will also, the terms of reference will also state the committee members and responsibilities. You know, because it involves some research, a committee has to be put in place. And this committee is also given a time frame when they are supposed to present this report. You do not, because it is a report that takes research, you do not spend a whole year when you're dealing with this. They will tell you that in 3 weeks' time, we would like to get a report on this. Because it does that, the terms of reference also state the date. The date to hand in report or present the report to the rest of the members or the people that we are writing to. We would term this as the time frame. Gives us the time frame. So all that information will actually make what we term as the terms of reference. So from the terms of reference, like I said, it is a long report because even in structure, it appears longer than the short report. From the terms of reference, you go to procedure. Other people call it methods of data collection. Methods of data collection. Where does this take us? I hope this will not be a very hard area for you because I understand geography is compulsory and all of us do geography. And when we go out for field work, in our field work, we have to look at methods of data collection. And when you look at methods of data collection, we have things like observation, we have things like interviews, we have things like using questionnaires. We could also have discussions. So before you give us the information, you tell us, how did you get the information that you're giving us? You know, I had discussions with several groups of people, these categories that actually gave me good information that really drove me miles ahead. We also made great observations as far as this was concerned. We also handed questionnaires to people to fill in information now that we could not cover everybody given the time frame. The questionnaires worked faster, and we also interviewed people. Take an example. We have looked at the sports team going out, and the report we shall write will take the format of a short report. Now, take an example. If, God forbid, we have a strike here in Chibuli, and then the students' leader has to give a report thereafter. The strike takes place, and then the head boy is tasked to produce a report in maybe a week's time. Many people will give reports because people are looking for information as far as the strike is concerned. We cannot have a strike and you fail to carry out investigations. We cannot have a strike and you fail to make a what? A survey. The teachers will be interviewed. They'll be investigated. The non-teaching staff will be investigated. The community around to find out what is really the problem, what is the cause of the strike. The students themselves, because they want to get the culprits, the ringleaders in this strike. If property was destroyed, how are we going to deal with it? How are we going to, if the windows were broken, how are we going to fix all this? The students will pay this. It takes a long period of time. People trying to put things into place and come up with a concrete conclusion here. So in that case, you realize that the report we shall write there is a long one. We shall have terms of reference. Not everybody on staff will have to come down here and draw a report. A committee will be instituted to do this work and give a report to the rest of the Kibuli community as far as the strike is concerned. Now, like I said, we need methods of data collection. They will interview, they will observe. It will not require them to say, damages. When we come to findings, we have the subtitle damages. It does not require the committee to go and interview what the damages were. They'll move around school and tell the windows were broken, teachers' cars were burnt, this was destroyed, the students did this. All those damages will be talked about. But those will be observed. That is why I said when it comes to the long report, there are several methods that you have to employ here because we need concrete information. Now, after procedure, the next step with the long report will be the findings. Remember when we are looking at the sample of the short report. I told you that you remove that part where they have used findings and then call it what? Body. Now, when it comes to the long report, we don't have a body in the long report. We have findings. And I hope you understand why we have findings. There are findings because we have done investigations. And when we carried out the investigations, this is what we found out. So what you regard as the body in the short report is the same thing as the findings in the long report. The only difference is that we only change wording and call it body in the short report and then term it as findings when it comes to the long report. So that means that Even under the findings for examination purposes, try to locate at least a minimum of 7 findings. 7 findings here. Then this particular report demarcates the recommendations from the conclusion. The other one joins it as one subtitle, but this one separates. We shall have a subtitle, recommendation. Give all the recommendations. What do you recommend? We recommend that when the students return after the strike, they should be given this. We also recommend that the students will pay this amount of money to cater for this. We also recommend that the senior threes who were ringleaders in the strike, the culprits be expelled from school. And now that we have almost half of senior three taking part in the strike, we are going to have half of the senior threes coming back, and that will constitute what we shall term as our senior three for that period of time. So that is what they are recommending. We are also recommending that nobody enters the school without identifying himself and checking on this office before they either get into the dormitories, whether there are these non-teaching staff, these group employees that maybe clean the dormitories. They say they'll be checked first before they enter, and after cleaning, they'll be checked, and that is when they'll get out of the gate. None of them is supposed to be a resident here. They'll come up with recommendations depending on what they discovered as far as the strike is concerned. Then finally, after our conclusion, just like we did with the short report, we are going to sign off. And the way in which we sign off with this long report, it does not differ from the way we sign off with the short report. I want you to look at the sample there. You see the heading that we have given, the long report here as a report on the water crisis at Mazima Secondary School, Term 2, from the head teacher to the chairman board of directors. Now, one thing you should know, so long as you begin the title with the report on, this other arrangement of the to, from, or from, to, or what, does not matter, so long as all that information is within the title. You realize that when you stick to what I have written here, sometimes you realize when you frame the title, it really fails to come out. So you rearrange, so long as you have started with a report on. Rearrange these other items to bring out the proper wording and proper flow of the title, so long as we can see what we want. Now, when you look at your sample, I think your sample doesn't have the introduction, but you should know that this report also has to begin with an introduction. Then from the introduction, your report, your sample there, gives us the terms of reference, and it says the principal Mazima Secondary School formed a committee of 2 teachers, 3 students, and 1 security officer to investigate the serious water shortage in the school and give him a report in 1 week. The committee was required to come up with the recommendations on how to remedy the situation. When we are looking at terms of reference, we state objectives, we state dates. When we are supposed to give the feedback, that is the time frame, we state the committee. Because there is a lot of work here, it cannot be done by only one person. There is a committee that is instituted to ensure that the work is done. And that is stated in the terms of reference, just like we have seen. And they go down to even reflect what are the names of the people and the different positions that they take on this committee. So when you write the terms of reference, you go ahead to give us the names of the people on that committee and their responsibility that was given to them, or the responsibility that they were carrying out. From there, we have procedure, methods of data collection. But like I said here, we have an error in that when you look at the samples are presented the subtitles in In lowercase, we said we use uppercase, capital letters. Apart from when we come to the findings, the subtitles under findings, please put that right. So we have procedure and our subtitles actually here. There's an error. They have not been underlined. We ensure that we underline them when we are dealing with this type of report. Then they give us the procedure. They said the committee developed a questionnaire which was used to gather information. Now they are giving us what they used. They developed a questionnaire. They also went ahead to observe, just to observe around school whether the number of taps that they had, the pipes and the way they were connected in the school. That depends on what you want to do. But like I said, when it comes to methods of data collection, there is no way you can use only one method. Ensure that you marry all the different methods of data collection that we have talked about, because you're supposed to produce concrete information here. Therefore, you need to make a thorough survey. From the methods of data collection, they give us the findings here. And they say after analyzing the information, the committee found out that here they do not give us the subtitles. Remember, I said the findings have to carry subtitles. What is it? And we do not even need that wording. Please, when you're giving findings, do not write a paragraph under findings and then come to subtitles, depending on the areas that you want to talk about. The moment you write the title, findings, immediately what I would expect under this subtitle is another subtitle, because it is this subtitle that is explaining what we need here. We do not need an explanation that you carried out to find out that is what exactly you are meant to do. And that is exactly what this particular subtitle is talking about. So the error this one makes here is failing to give us the subtitles, the things that they looked at as far as the problem they are addressing is concerned. And I think I do not need to go into the details of this, because when I was trying to give an example of maybe a strike in school, I went ahead to give you the subtitles that could be considered when we come to findings. You could as well employ that knowledge and come up with subtitles under this given particular topic that we are dealing with, and then draw paragraphs for the findings and give body to what we would regard as the findings in this particular assignment. Now here, again, we have a problem. The writer begins with conclusions and then recommendations. Remember, the recommendations have to come first. So the recommendations, please adjust that and make sure you deal with the recommendations first, and thereafter you come up with the After the recommendations, you come up with the conclusion. Fix it the way it is supposed to be, so that we do not make the same mistakes. After that, after giving us the conclusion, please do not hesitate to go ahead and give us the signing off. The signing off does not differ from the signing off that we have looked at before. We just sign off the same way. So please sign off in the same way. I hope that has taken us through what we can term as a long report. When you look at that long report, we still have two other reports that we are to deal with. Unfortunately, I seem not to see any questions. I don't know whether people are understanding things very well and they have nothing to ask here for clarification as far as report writing is concerned. And the two types of reports that we have looked at, the short and the long report. I decided to deal with these two reports first because they seem to have certain areas that are quite similar, And when you look at them concurrently and mark the difference between the two, it enables you understand the two different areas very well. We could use the short report to understand the long report. Like I said from the start, you should be very keen, depending on what we have talked about, to tell which type of report to write where. Because usually when it comes to examinations, when they set a question, they do not at any one time direct you on which report to write. But when you look at the kind of question that has been set, it is upon you to use your own discrete and tell that since this question is dealing with this particular area, then the most suitable for me to write, or what the examiner is looking for, is the short report, and therefore here I should produce none other than the short report. It would be very bad for you to begin producing a short report, yet the question is dealing with something that has to do with some kind of investigations. So those areas that I've hinted at, routine and investigations, should be very clear to you, and you could use them to tell when to write what. They could act as very good guidelines in directing you on the required type of report that you are meant to produce. Like I said, we still have two other reports to deal with. That is what we call the incidental report, and then we have what we call the meta report. Let us look at the letter report. And maybe as I look at time, we might not be in position to look at the incidental report. We shall look at it maybe next time. Now, when you look at the letter report, we do not have a sample of the letter report when you look at the pieces that you have. But the letter report, just like we said, it has this word letter there. This one should be the guideline. We also term this for the many reports we have looked at today. We have looked at the several names that are used in line with the name that we have identified here. You realize that this one is also called a confidential report. When you see the word confidential, it rings bells. It's not a report that is just exposed anyhow. A report that everybody is to see. It is confidential. This report is usually from employer to employee. It is from one employer to another employer. When do we write this report? This report is usually written when we go out to seek for jobs. You come to seek for vacancy in Chibuli as a teacher, and then they interview you. Remember, when they interview you, they do not tell you the results there and then. They say, we shall communicate maybe after this given period of time. So they give themselves a time frame. Meanwhile, they look at your presentation in this oral interview. But they would also wish to know more about you that you cannot say or you have not said to them. They cannot blindly bring you here without getting to know your history or some good information about you that seems quite relevant. In the interview, they must have inquired from you where you are working, and maybe you reflected it on your CV or somewhere in your application. So they will dwell on that and say, hey, this teacher wants to join Chibuli Secondary School. This teacher is coming from Kapungu. But presentation is okay, but we need to know more about this teacher. There are certain things that have to do with their personality that they cannot actually interview us on, but they can get information from people you have been working with. Now, the head teacher of Chibuli Secondary School will not seek for information from teachers of Kapungu. No. will seek information from the head teacher of Kakungulu. This head teacher will write a letter, which we term as a letter report. Why is it called a letter report? Because this particular report marries two. It marries the features of a letter, and it also marries the features of a what? A report. So we write a letter that is in form of a what? We write a letter and seek for information. The head teacher of Kakungulu, in reply, does not write a letter, but writes what we term as a letter report. The head teacher of Chibuli does not write a letter report. For him, he simply writes a letter. Remember, he's seeking for information from the head teacher of Kakungulu, of Kakungulu Memorial. And this head teacher of Chibuli that has nothing to report. It is the head teacher of Kakungulu that has something to report about the teacher that has come to seek a vacancy in Chibuli. So what the other head teacher writes is what we can term as a letter report, giving information as far as the personality of this individual is concerned. So when this head teacher writes this report, he forwards it to the head teacher here. Nobody sees the report. The information is only between the two head teachers. That is why we say it is from employer to employer. Even if you're going to work under the director of studies and the deputy academics, the deputy academics and the director of studies will not at any one time have information on what the head teacher of Kakungulu actually wrote. It is the head teacher that will get to know the teacher that he's going to employ or say no to the request that has been made by this particular teacher. Now, when you look at the letter report, we look at the format of this letter report. How is it supposed to look like? The format, we cannot run away from the fact that we have to begin with a heading. So you write the heading the way we have been doing it, with all the features that we have been talking about, inclusive. Then after that, this letter report, because it is a letter report from the head teacher of Kakungulu, it is going to include addresses. It is first going to present the writer's address. The writer's address. It will go to the date, just like we write a letter. The address in this letter report is written in the same way that we write the address when we are writing letters. So you write the address, then also skip the line like we do, write a date, exactly the same thing. Then we shall go to the receiver's address. Receiver's address. After the receiver's address, then we shall go to the reference. Now, instead of this letter having body and findings, this letter has what we term as the reference. Remember, when we are writing a letter, we have the re, and under re, we write subject. Just like we write the re, which is in full reference, it is the same thing we are going to do when we are writing this letter report. Now, after the reference, obviously, the reference, if this person is writing the reference, we shall have RE, we shall have our semicolon, and then we shall have that head teacher wants to give information to this head teacher on teacher not here. My name will be here. That would be the person. Namala not here. That would be the reference. Just that would act as a reference. Now, after the reference, remember we have our reference underlined. We shall begin with a title. This person will begin with an introduction. Hereby, I introduce this person who has been working with me for this period of time, etc. Then we shall come back to this, to subtitles. What does he have to say about performance? Begins now giving subtitles like we saw. Performance. What does he have to say about the performance of Namala Nahia? As far as performance is concerned, as a teacher, she happens to be a superb teacher. I hope I'm telling the truth. etc. Performance. Then, how about co-curricular activities. This person is very active. She has been active. You know, one time I acted as a house mistress of Luangu. She has been acting as a house mistress, very vibrant, very active, and her house has always been in the lead. So this head teacher looks and says, yes, if we are looking for a house mistress, this one will do. What other thing? Behavior. Comes down here and says, my teacher, she has been a very good teacher here. When it comes to behavior, she's antisocial. When it comes to staff party, staff outings, interacting with fellow staff, she's so limited to herself. So this head teacher will know, the person I'm bringing here is very antisocial. Will this one fit in this community? No. So these are areas that this person will look at. So depending on what this head teacher has to say, this will come in form of what? Subtitles. But remember here we have not used anything like body. We have not used anything like findings. Instead, we are looking at what we have to write under after the reference, and actually what would have been the body of the letter comes in form of subtitles. So after the subtitles that this person has to present, this particular letter will again take us the reference. Let me term this, that is the body of the letter, but without the subtitle. Then we shall come to, in the body, this person will also present the recommendations in the body. So we'll present a subtitle, recommendations. I recommend the above person to be considered for greener what? Pastures. Then after the recommendation, here we shall have a conclusion for the letter. But you know what a conclusion for the letter looks like? A conclusion for the letter is not the same conclusion we have when it comes to other aspects, other types of what? Of reports. The conclusion in the letter is done the way we conclude letters. Remember, when we are concluding letters, we say, I will be very grateful. Now, this person is not going to be grateful for the service, but I look forward for further assistance, having, talks about this person. It also comes in form of a recommendation. It deals with the recommendations, and then we have wordings that will reflect that we have come to the end of the letter. Then thereafter, we shall have the signing off. And we shall sign exactly the way the letter is signed. I hope this makes it very clear why this one is called a letter report. The first thing that explains is the fact that it has the features of a letter, though it also marries it with what we can consider as a body of a letter. You will agree with me that when we are writing letters, we have never written letters that have subtitles. But this kind of letter has subtitles in the body. The subtitles that are similar to the subtitles that we have in a report. There's no way we can term it solely as a letter. That is why we find ourselves terming it as a letter report. So when you're looking at the features of a letter report, this is the summary of the format. This is the summary of how it should look like. You realize there are certain things where it does not differ greatly from the reports that we have been looking at. We have just 5 minutes to the end of the lesson. We still have one other report to look at, and that is the incidental report. But given the time that is remaining, I realize we cannot be in position to look at that particular report. Therefore, when we come to our next lesson, we shall begin from that particular report, which is the incidental report. You can go back and look at what we have given you. I think what we are going to do later, not now, much later, I will present some notes on these different reports, full samples for you to look at the full body of the reports that we have talked about. I hope you're practicing writing this. It makes it very easy when we look at an aspect and then you go back and give yourself a question and then try it out. You try out for the speeches and check whether you can write all those speeches. You try out for the reports that we have looked at and check out whether you can write all those reports. I'm looking forward to questions as far as report writing is concerned. I happen not to see the questions here. I don't know whether the questions are there or not. But they are not being reflected here. Could I take it that people have grasped the report writing? If you have questions, you forward them and we look at them. Somebody says help add notes. When you look at the lesson, we had some samples to look at as we explained. Like I said, when I was ending the lesson, I said full notes. Here, do not expect notes to do the report writing, but full samples could guide you on how you're supposed to present these reports. So full notes will be given to you. Somebody is asking, when you're signing, do you sign with a real signature or with your name in small letters? Now, if you do not have a signature, obviously, if I don't have a signature, the first thing I'll do is to write my name in small letters. Then I'll send Navaraja here. Then I'll write the name in capital letters to indicate that the other one is my signature. Like I said, this will be the signature, this will be the name in capital letters, and thereafter we shall go to the designation. So your name comes out like that. I hope those are the questions that we have so far had. Buembo and Sematimba and Nantumbwe. Aliva. People are demanding for notes. We shall present the notes to you later. Full notes, because these were skeletons of the samples that we wish to use as guidelines, and then you see exactly what we are talking about for clarity as far as report writing is concerned. I wish you the best, and we meet next time. Goodbye.